Len, thanks so much for joining us. Len May, he's the CEO of Endocanna. Len is joining us to present more on the precision medicine topic. What's really exciting is what Len has done to put into action a lot of the themes that came up. How do we get more precise in the therapeutics and our understanding? And as Len would like to talk about that journey, which isn't necessarily overnight. So thank you for joining, and please take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keith. I wanted to share our website, maybe give a little bit of background on myself, how I got into this, and then how EndoDNA actually started, how Endocanna Health started. First of all, I'm a patient. So I've been consuming cannabis as my medicine for ADD since I was a teenager, as my alternative to all kinds of prescription medication I was put on. So this became my mission in life, and I was an activist. I was the president of Cannabis Action Network. I own and operate dispensaries, cultivation facilities, also delivery services. But the real point and my mission is always the therapeutic qualities of this amazing plant. And having ADD, I'm doing a million things at once, or when something super stimulates me, I hyper-focus. It becomes sort of my obsession. And one of the things that I hyper-focused on with this experience that we used to have when there's two people with the same exact symptomatic conditions and or just disease or whatever that may be, and we suggest the same exact cultivar or chemovar for them. They consume exactly the same thing and have totally different results. So I always thought it was the plant itself. So I started working in the plant genomics side, going around the country in Canada, collecting samples of different plant material, and then getting it to a sequencer after we extract the DNA and purify it, and looking at the profile, the genetic profile of the plant. And this was an aha moment, the first one, where I saw, you want to name a cultivar or chemovar, Blue Dream. So we collect 5 different samples, 2 of them genetically match, 2 are related, 1 is not even related. So that, I thought this was the solution to everything. And then we had a meeting at Harvard Medical School with a bunch of physicians, healthcare professionals that were treating kids with epilepsy using CBD at that time. And it was very effective for a lot of different kids. And then some of them started coming back and saying, well, you know what, the seizures are coming back, or it's not working as well. And when we genetically sequenced those kids using pharmacogenomics, we saw that they have some markers in common, which led us to publish on these commonalities using Dravet syndrome. And everybody knows, Epidiolex and what happened there, so I'm not going to go into that detail. But it was my second light bulb moment where I said, well, if there is 1 or 2 biomarkers, if there's, SNPs or single nucleotide polymorphisms, maybe there's more. And that led us to launching Endocanna Health. So what we did first was we did research. We basically put together an incredible science team. And for the first 6-7 months, all we did was look at every single study and every single SNP that had direct or indirect association with your endocannabinoid system. Once we did that, we partnered with a company called Illumina to build our custom chip. We sequenced just under 700,000 different SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms. But the thing is, we build this proprietary algorithm that we have a patent on that not only matches you with your genotype and a suggested ratio, but also looks at everything in place where it has a peer-reviewed study or an assay associated with that. And I'll show you what that looks like. Then once we put all that together, we created our kit. So a kit, it looks like this. Inside is a buccal swab. You swab the inside of your mouth. You put it back in the box, in the bio bag, and it's already self-addressed stamped, and you mail it to our lab, and we'll run a sequence on that. Once we do that, we can get your results in our HIPAA-compliant, fully anonymized, secure portal, which I'll show you in a minute. The other thing we did was we are able to take data from any of the other DNA companies like 23andMe, Ancestry, etc., you can upload the raw data that you already own right to our portal called mydna.live, and we'll translate that for you within 30 seconds and provide you a report. That report is only as good as the version of 23andMe or Ancestry that you have, and we have a guide on our website that tells you what's covered, what's not covered, so you know that going in. But if you're ready, what I'll do, unless you have some questions, I'll actually go through and log in and show you what everything looks like. It's very easy to use. I mean, the upload is just an upload. You take your raw data and you upload it, but the swab is really easy. One of the challenges that I had, because I'm a fanatic with DNA tests, I've taken all of them, like 23andMe, Ancestry. I even took one for my vitamins. I took my microbiome. I took one that tells me what wine is best for me. So all of them. And it's interesting to learn. But one of the challenges that I had personally is maybe I don't have enough saliva, but filling up a tube with saliva took me a long time. And I kind of find it a little bit gross personally. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't want to do a spit tube. So we did a buccal swab, which is basically a big Q-tip to do that.
Great.
So I wanted to just make sure that I point this out. This is extremely important. Our information is fully anonymized and secure. If you swab and you do not register your information, that's going to be encrypted. We will never know that DNA sample belongs to that individual. You have to register. That data is encrypted. You are the only one that has the decryption code. When you log in, that information is decrypted and you get the results, and you can share that with your healthcare professional if you want, since we're HIPAA compliant. So I want to make sure that I point that out, because security and sensitivity to data is extremely, extremely important to us. So you would log into your portal, and there's a couple of things that I want to point out to you here. So you have your welcome and all that, but one thing here is a survey. So why we create a survey, a couple of different reasons. Number one, we're able to get a baseline. So we understand what your pain scale is, what you're feeling in a moment. We have a baseline in the immediate. The other thing is, if you have a genetic predisposition, it is just that. It means that you have a genetic predisposition. It doesn't mean that that gene is expressed. So that epigenetics profile, we don't know unless you tell us. So to give an example of that, if you have a genetic predisposition towards insomnia, but you're sleeping fine, you have no issues with sleep, but your issues right now that you want to resolve are maybe stress, anxiety, and who doesn't have that, during these times? And then maybe there's some inflammation. So by answering the questions, we'll provide you a personalized wellness plan that addresses the things that you want to address in a moment right now. Now, we'll still give you the information about insomnia, because maybe you can mitigate the expression of that gene, but that's something to be aware of, what you're experiencing in the moment, and then what's dormant right now that hasn't been expressed. You should be empowered with all that information, and we provide all that to you. The second thing that I want to point out on this is drug interaction. It's very, very, very important, and I know some people covered it during the event already, but it's really important to understand that certain cannabinoids have an interaction with your prescription medication. So what we did was we put together a drug interaction report. And what it does, it looks at specific medication. We have 204 different medications, brand and generic, and you can add your own medication, and we show you if that has an assay or a study or reference that shows that that may be an inhibitor of your prescription medication when you consume a cannabinoid, sometimes CBD, sometimes THC, and we give you a suggestion, and you can take that information to your healthcare professional and expand on that some more. So more empowering you with information so you can make better informed decisions when you consume cannabis. A couple other things that I want to share, and I'll dive into the report. So we have 74 different reports in 16 different categories, and all these have individual reports. And the way I like to look at this is to start with a summary. So the summary basically gives you an overview. And the way we like to look at it is a green, a yellow, and red. So green means that there is no variant detected. So there is no genetic risk factor involved with it based on references. Yellow means there is a variant detected, so there may be a slightly elevated risk. And red means that there are several variants detected, and which increases your risk exponentially. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the reports are as follows. You have anxiety, which has fear extinction, PTSD, stress reactivity. We have some cognitive function reports that include working memory impairment and impulsivity, some digestive markers, also drug dependence. This is a really interesting one because we've had a number of healthcare professionals, pain management specialists also, that have been using our reports to be able to guide people away from an opioid experience because they have a predisposition towards dependence and onto cannabis as a modality of treatment for those specific conditions where they may be able to use opioids. So we leave that up to the healthcare professional to make that determination, where we provide that data as well. Metabolism, which is really important. This has to do a lot with dosing also. So you can see, I'll just flip into this for a second, but you can see where there is a genetic predisposition to being a poor metabolizer of CBD. So there is a suggestion on dosing, modifying your dosing and cutting that in half if you have what's called a heterozygous allele combination or genotype in CYP2C19 on this specific marker. And I'll dive deeper into the reports, but I just want to share that for a second. Going back into the reports, we also have some interesting reports about muscle soreness, where some people have predispositions to that. The host susceptibility reports, we actually made it a part of the overall report. And one of the things that we do, we have lifetime updates. So because we have this proprietary AI platform, we look for research. We're involved in research, which I'll get to in a few minutes, but we're also pulling all the research that goes on in the world. And as it's published, your reports are updated. So you have lifetime updates. What the host susceptibility reports are is we gave that out for free to people that already have other DNA reports, that you can upload your data and just see if you have some predispositions to certain symptomatic conditions that have an affiliation with a corona type of virus experience. So you know if you have immune susceptibility, that's something for you to be aware of. We do not talk about COVID-19 or anything like that, but in order for you to understand what you need to do to strengthen your immune system, first you need to know if you have genetic predispositions. So people who already have our reports, just get those reports added to their overall profile. We also have metabolism reports. Mood, which includes major depressive feelings. You can see that there's various variants detected, seasonal mood disorders, musculoskeletal immune, pain, including migraines and CVS, sleep, including insomnia and bruxism, which is grinding your teeth, and THC side effects, working memory impairment, psychomotor control, and then some vitamin reports. So I'm going to dive into the report, but I just want to preface one thing and then pause if you have a question before I dive in. But I wanted to say that one of the main reasons why we do what we do is to be able to have people avoid as much as possible an adverse experience with cannabis use. We feel if we can guide people to avoiding an adverse experience, they'll have a much more optimal experience in their cannabis use. And there's plenty of examples of that. I like to use the analogy of like a GPS, a Waze of cannabis. And what we'll do is we'll show you that there's a road over here that has a traffic jam. It has construction on it. This road over here is a much better road to take. It doesn't guarantee there's not going to be a pothole on the way here and there, but it's a much better experience if you actually have the information to try to avoid those possible adverse events. And the studies have shown that individuals go through 6 to 8 different formulations or cannabinoid profiles before they find one that works for them. And when they do find one that works for them, how do they guarantee that, I use Blue Dream, how do they guarantee that their Blue Dream is going to be the same as a Blue Dream that they get in another dispensary, et cetera? So these are the challenges that we're trying to overcome.
Len, briefly, I see on your list is quite a variety, quite a diverse list of, as you described them, and the potential to drill down right into these report areas. Have you developed this list taxonomy from that effort to keep, culling through research and what's published, as far as this is really, Endocanna's list? And because even the language I see doesn't necessarily follow any necessarily strict organization. It looks like you've made some really, again, trade-offs and prioritization, because the list, I could imagine, could be even longer, right?
Yeah, well, Keith, it's a great question. Yeah, it will grow. The challenge that we're juggling all the time is FDA, because we're not FDA approved, and being able, and studies. So our number one thing that the science team kind of negotiates is what to include, what to exclude. So having good research that's peer reviewed is really important. And we add reports based on everybody agreeing to the reports that we're going to add. We also have to be really careful not to be used as a diagnostic test, because the FDA, we're not FDA approved. So this is for informational purposes only, and to be able to be used with your healthcare professional. If a healthcare professional wants to use this as a diagnostic tool, we have 700,000 different SNPs, so we can dive pretty deep. But in order to use this as direct to consumer, we have to be really careful of how we position that information. Yeah. Even the terminology that we use has to be, kind of run through different various attorneys. So we have to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And
I congratulate you only in as much at a first glance, right? That first impression. For the non-scientists, they, I would say, arguably wouldn't be overwhelmed, because things are categorized and they're not so far into, obviously, the science. You can dive deep in any of these, right? But no, this is perfect. Yeah. So continue. This is exciting. Yeah.
Let me just dive into. So I'm just diving into this one just because it has a red, so it has multiple variants detected. So it's major mood, major depressive feelings. So the way the report looks, and I appreciate, by the way, Keith, you saying that, because one of the things that we're trying to do, we're sciencey people, and sometimes we overwhelm with science. So we always try to kind of go back and say, we need a summary that Bob from Iowa can understand. And if Bob from Iowa is listening, it's just a characterization of an average person that doesn't have a lot of scientific knowledge. We always try to outdo ourselves with science. So we have to be really, really careful in the way that we communicate that to the average population. So I appreciate you saying that. So the way the report starts, it says that depression is a mental illness characterized by negative thinking, et cetera, et cetera. So we give you some information about that. We give you, and I'll get back to this, we give you a summary of findings that you may have. You have multiple endocannabinoid system genotypes, which are associated with increased risk of depressive feelings. You should monitor yourself for signs of depressive feelings, particularly if you have experienced early life stress or significant recent stress. Well, we're in a very stressful situation right now, so I'm sure if people have this genetic predisposition, that's something for them to be aware of. We also go into the science. I'm going to dig into the science for a little bit, because we have a sciencey audience, and I'm sure they'll be interested in relating to this. So these are the two different markers that we look at. CNR1 and CNR2 specifically for this symptomatic condition. And the way that it looks is that we show you if there is a genetic predisposition, and so, John, you may have a high risk of depressive feelings if you have experienced a high level of recent stress. So the gene is CNR1, that's the single nucleotide polymorphism, SNP. We give you the marker, the location of where it is in the chromosome, and we give you your genotype. I don't think I need to go into explaining a genotype, but just as a really, really high level so people can relate to. The way I like to describe genotypes, computers kind of speak in a binary code. So they have ones and zeros, and then we put the user interface on top of that, but they understand ones and zeros. So your DNA speaks in a 4-letter code, a C, a T, an A, and a G. The combination of those letters create your genotype. So that's your genetic predisposition. When you get the same one from both of your parents, it's called homozygous. When you get to different ones, it's called heterozygous. This is really important, and your genotype is really what makes you you. The thing that I find fascinating is there are certain genes that you inherit that are sort of locked in. They're your genetic code, like your hair color, your eye color, your height, or male pattern baldness, like I have. But certain genes, you can actually take action. So your lifestyle can dictate whether that gene is going to turn on or off. So these are some of those genes that you're empowered with that information so you can mitigate the possible expression, or if that's being expressed already, you can turn that light switch down. And that's really our goal. So a couple other things that I want to point out on here. We have an FAQ, which tells you how the endocannabinoid system is involved in depression, some other bits of information about depression and depressive feelings. And then the other thing that is really interesting is how do you compare to different population groups? So granted, your background can also determine your genetic predisposition. So depending if you have an African descent genotype or East Asian versus American population versus how prevalent this is in general population and European, you can see where you kind of fit in. The other thing that I wanted to show is we also have a reference. So there's a reference that's peer-reviewed on every one of these study results, and we have that available for each one of them. The next thing that I wanted to show is that the summary of findings and what your suggested ratio is. So in order for you either to mitigate the expression of that gene of depressive feelings, or if you're already expressing it, to kind of turn that down, we have a suggestion of a 20-to-1 to 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. The reason why there's a ratio, and it'll change once you answer your survey, is because we don't know what your experience with THC is. So if you're somebody who's experienced in THC, you may want to start with a 1-to-1. But if somebody like my mom who's never consumed THC, maybe she'll start with a 20-to-1 and titrate her way down. We also give you a primary and secondary terpene profile. And the reasons for that are we dive into this is why cannabinoids, and we give you some references, but we also do the same thing for the terpene profiles that we suggest. So we have research showing that limonene can actually has been shown to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. And linalool has been shown to lessen the anxiety that's provoked by THC, all with peer-reviewed studies associated with that. Final thing that I want to mention on this is now, going back to the summary, we have your personalized wellness plan. And a personalized wellness plan is a summary of all the different genotypes where you have an elevated risk. So you can go down in your Bob from Iowa summary that's personalized to you, and you can see based on your genotype where you have an elevated risk. So major depressive feelings, and then you go into focus, work and memory impairment, going into immune, so if you have ITP or maybe some inflammation markers, stress, anxiety, so fear extinction, also insomnia, etc. So, I've been asked, well, it's great. Can you just give me one single thing that's going to take care of my needs? Tell me what I need to take. And the question I always come back with is there actually medicine that can say you take this pill or you take this formulation and it takes care of all your needs? Well, it doesn't exist. It depends what it is that you're trying to address. So if you're trying to address insomnia, this is your insomnia formulation. So this is sort of your NyQuil. And if you're trying to address maybe during the day, you have your focus formulation. So this is your daytime formulation. And you can kind of pick and choose what it is that you're experiencing in the moment. You can take that information to a dispensary, or depending on what state, province, or country, depending on the laws, then you can get that type of formulation either delivered to you if you're in California or in Canada, or it depends on the state requirements. But we actually took it a step further, which is our other algorithm, where we actually take products. We use certificates of analysis from different manufacturers, and we look at that certificate of analysis, and we match that to a suggested ratio. So there is different products that you can see in the database, and they give you a percentage of match based on what your suggested ratio is. So you can have a product that is a 1-to-1 versus and you can search by tincture, you can search by sublingual, you can even go for flower, tincture, transdermal patch, anything. And then we have your personal shopping assistant. So if you want to see what it is, if you're experiencing some depressive feelings and you want to see all the products and match those, cannabis is personal. This is the thing. I want everybody to understand one thing. 99.9% of us genetically identical. That's 0.1% is what makes us different. And in trying to find the combination of your genetic predispositions and your epigenetics, so the feedback loop mechanism that we get back is where our AI actually supports, gets the information back, and it communicates it hopefully back to the industry so we can make better precision therapeutic products. And that's really the goal of EndoDNA, is to be able to provide that and lift the entire industry with more precision therapeutics. So I wanted to go into a couple of different things. We talked about, I briefly showed stress. So I just wanted to show some findings. And what we found is 53% of the population has a genetic predisposition to a increased rate of stress or anxiety. That's based on the FA marker, and FA breaks down anandamide, which is released to be able to get you back to homeostasis after a stressful event. So being able to know that you have a genetic predisposition towards that, and when somebody has a stressful event that may be triggered by high THC with a different terpene profile, understand that you have a genetic predisposition and you need to be able to mitigate that. That's empowering information. Also, metabolism. So being able to see what type of metabolizer you are guides you into an experience with modality. So maybe somebody who's a poor metabolizer wants to avoid their liver, wants to avoid their first pass and consume their cannabinoid therapeutic sublingually, buccally, or even combustibles, which we don't necessarily recommend, but it's definitely a method of consumption that bypasses the liver. So knowing that you're a poor metabolizer will be really helpful to be able to do that. And we have science to support that. This is the this is the SNP associated with that. This is the genotype, and there's a general population that has this genetic predisposition. So understanding that empowers you with that information. Also, we talked about depression, so I'm not going to go into that in detail, but just understanding that there is nearly 40% of the population that has a genetic predisposition. And we've seen, based on our feedback loop mechanism, that high THC with certain types of terpene profiles, like myrcene being a primary terpene, which is found in indica-dominant cultivars and chemovars, that seems to be able to exacerbate that genetic predisposition towards depressive feelings. Insomnia, same thing. 34% of the population has this genetic predisposition. Understanding that and knowing how to mitigate those rough edges is extremely empowering. This is just a really, really quick chart of some of the findings based on genetic predispositions and how many people actually walk around with these genotypes. So you can see that we have these genetic predispositions already programmed in. By knowing that we have some of these, it can control that experience. And think about it this way, just as an example, really, really quick. If you're ultra poor metabolizer, and I was going to use Grandma Mary, it's my favorite experience to be able to communicate. Grandma Mary, who's an ultra poor metabolizer, who was diagnosed with cancer, went and got an edible. And she had a really bad experience, 50, 60 years ago. She had an awful experience. Not only is she a poor metabolizer, so now she had a much more powerful experience that lasted much longer. It actually triggered her predisposition to stress and to her psychotic-like effect, so AKT1. So she started to hallucinate. And not only did she have a bad experience, but because she lives in an assisted living facility, she went and told everybody else in her assisted living facility, stay away from the devil's lettuce. This doesn't really work. And all she needed to know was to avoid her first pass, to get something that's more balanced. And when she found her medicine, her therapeutics that she took sublingually, she had an exceptional experience. And actually, as she was getting her chemo and she was taking cannabis for that, she went around and gave like our business card and phone number to everybody else in the facility to say, hey, call these people, consume cannabis, because it's something that will help you with the side effects that you're getting from chemo, because it helped her. Really, really quick, our difference, we already talked about 700,000 SNPs, patent technology, our scientific advisory board, our CLIA certified lab. We're HIPAA compliant. We give you, our algorithm to give you more suggested, better formulations, better ratios, and research. And this is where I want to kind of pause, and then I'm almost finished, but I want to talk about the research that I want to encourage this entire community to participate.
Please.
One of my pet peeves is there is not enough research. Everybody's correct. There's not enough research. It's done that way for a reason, but it's changing. There's many, many clinical trials, 50, 60 clinical trials going on around the world. Please continue to do research. We're involved in a clinical trial, and we're involved in 3 studies under institutional review boards. We are fully encouraged by the results we found. In one of our studies, we found so far, and it'll be published soon, that in 80%, a little bit over 80% of the participants in the study, there's a genotype that they have in common that's only found in 0.004 of the general population. That's the type of information that we want to share with the industry, and we're going to collaborate with everybody here, everybody who's conducting or thinking of conducting research. Let's add genotyping as a factor to that. So please let us know. I just want to share, this is our scientific board. We have some amazing people, including Dr. Ethan Russo, Dr. Chris Spooner, who's one of the best naturopaths in North America, Dr. Mike Tagan, and this ball guy over here. And then that's what we're offering. Collaboration with research and the industry to advance cannabinoid learning that intersects in genomics. That's what we want to get to. So that's
fantastic.
That's us.
Thank you so much, Len May, CEO of Endocanna, and again, wish you well and be safe.
Thank you so much, Keith. Appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much.